Prairie Hill School Consolidated School District 133. On the meeting to order at 5:32 PM on January 29th, 2025. Meeting is called to order by me, Josh Hendricks, Board President, and we do have a quorum present today. Tina Anderson, Board Member, will be here. She's just going to be a few minutes behind. So list that for the record. Roll call.
Mr. Keller.
Ms. Wallenbacher,
Here.
Mr. Hendrick,
Here.
Ms. Anderson, Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mrs. Dixon,
Here.
Bell. Here. Mr. Cook.
Here.
All right. If you'll all rise for pledge of allegiance, if you're wearing headgear, please remove that. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which advances one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Kyle? Yeah, Kyle doing this. I'll, from, Benning Group LLC, our, district accountants.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Demas from Benning Group. I've been working with the district here for several years. I think I've lost count at this point. We were out during the summertime to complete the audit. We just got it wrapped up here shortly after the end of the calendar year. We were a bit delayed, so I'm a little bit later than what I normally am to come see you. We did have a few delays getting some things from the district's end, so that's why, again, I'm here a little bit later than what I normally am in November or December for your meetings. You have a couple of documents there in front of me. I'm going to go through a real high level on those. One document that you don't have that I'm going to cover really quick. It's called the financial profile score. This is kind of ISB's overall measure of financial health of the district. You score a 3.55 out of a 4.0. There's two metrics that aren't a perfect 4. They're both a 3. One of them relates to revenues and expenditures in your operating funds. I know there's some intentionality to spend down some of the reserves in those operating funds. So when you look at it in the scope of ISB's metrics here, it moves from a 4 down to a 3. When you look at total of roughly $9 million of revenue and spending in those funds, you're $50,000 short of being a 4. So you're right there in that top tier category. The other one that you get dinged on is the available long-term debt that you have available to you by statute. The debt that you carry in your bonds is actually exempted from the statutory legal debt limitation. Some of you may recall this from previous years. Based on the confines of ISB's calculation, we cannot exempt that debt from theirs. So even though it looks like some of this debt applies against your legal debt limitation, in reality, it really doesn't. I just can't change what ISB's form allows us to do. We've tried. They will not let us, and they will not give us the password to change their spreadsheet. So I'm confined to what ISB requires there. The smaller of the two packets that you have in front of you there, that's our management letter. As auditors, we're required to communicate certain things to you as the board in regards to internal controls and things of that nature. You see on page 2, there's some bullet pointed adjustments there in the middle of the page. Those are items that we had to adjust to get the financial statements to the position of where they are, where we can give our opinion on them. So there's some bullet points there of things that we've done. Many of those are repeat adjustments, not necessarily the same adjustment, but the same type of adjustment of things that we had posted in prior years. So that translates to our comment on page 4, where it's got a bolded heading there about the middle of the page. So we consider to be what's called a significant deficiency. There's kind of 3 levels of comments in our world. There's kind of general other comments. There's significant deficiencies that say, hey, pay attention to me. There's something here that we need to fix. And then there's the worst of the worst, which is material weaknesses, where there's possibility that something's wrong within the numbers. So this item with the adjustments that we posted within the financial statements, we consider to be in that middle category. This is kind of intensifying the comment from years past, where now some of these journal entries are repeats. So our goal when we talked to Clint and to Lisa was to help educate on what some of these items are that are being repeated, and where Lisa and the district can get that information to be able to post the adjustments before we come in to do the audit. So I don't have any major underlying concerns on anything. Some of these are very specific accounting treatments that have changed in the last couple of years, but there are some things that just attention to detail stuff that I think Lisa can get under control with a little bit of education from our part. So On the back page of that, page 5, there is one other item that we consider to be an other comment. It has to do with the expenditures, the actual expenditures compared to your budget. I'll get into that just a little bit deeper when I get into the other audit report in a second. One thing I always like to call attention to with this back page, page 5 here, is the items that aren't there, the things you don't see that were there last year that have now been resolved. So 3 things that were on this report last year from us. There was grant expenditure reports that are required to get filed 20 days after the end of every quarter. Almost every one of our districts has this comment that it's inevitable that one of them gets filed late during the course of the year. Big round of applause to Lisa and Clint and everyone involved in that. They were all filed on time within that 20-day window. The other one, which is a pretty consistent comment we see a lot of our districts, is everyone got their statement of economic interest filed on time. So that's a compliance requirement we have to look at for the state. So well done to everybody for getting that in on time. The last one, which was the more significant comment that we had last year, was the documentation of the internal controls, the processes, the checks and balances that are in place at the district that we knew existed but weren't ever documented in writing. Lisa and Clint, with the help of Rachel, went through and got all of that up to speed. I came out and spent a day over the summer and really dove into those things and said, okay, here's what we say we're doing. Is this what's happening in actuality? We tweaked some of the things based on what was written versus what was actually happening. It seemed like in certain cases, things were pivoting more than what it was being done by the way it was written. So it's just a matter of rewriting that and kind of flipping the thought process. But overall, no major holes in the internal control. It was more of a matter of getting them documented. So we have reliance on them as auditors that says, this is what you say you're doing. Can we test that then and prove that that's in fact happening? So getting those documents was a huge step from our end to making that happen. And, heaven forbid something happens to someone in the process, there's documentation there for someone to step in and understand what's going on and who looks at those things. So that's what's not there anymore, which is obviously a good improvement from the year before. So then the thicker of the packets that you have, that's our formal audit report. We file a little different form that gets sent into ISB. That's all been taken care of now, so everything is up to date there. A few select pages that I'm going to cover here. If you get past the first view of the table of contents, the first letter on our letterhead, it's got a heading on it that says Independent Auditors Report. We're required to give an opinion on your financial statements. We give what's called an unmodified opinion, which means that it's clean. The numbers are where they're supposed to be and they're the right amounts. Any questions on that? The next letter, so it's technically page 5 in the report there. That's our report on internal control. I talked a little bit before about the internal control and the processes and documenting all that. We don't give an opinion on internal control because we don't test it to that minute detail, but we look at internal control enough to understand it and then be able to test the underlying numbers that built the financial statements. So the only thing that we had noted there in that internal control was the material audit adjustments that we posted that need to be hopefully corrected then when we get the numbers next year. Okay. But anything to add on any of that we talked about? Oh my God.
Buddy did.
Well, okay.
Feel free to speak up.
I think it told me to knock it off.
Yeah.
Page 6 is the balance sheet. So at the end of the fiscal year in June, there was about $5.5 million in cash. Based on how you report your financial statements, that $5.5 million basically represents the reserves that you have available in your various funds. So if you look across the columns on page 6 there, you can kind of see what's in each one of those individual funds at the end of June. The next page is the income statement. So if you look on page 7, third line from the bottom, that's what shows as the operating surplus, so a positive number. The numbers in brackets there would be deficits. So any of the funds that show the bracketed numbers there are deficit spending for the year. The transportation fund that shows the deficit spending was within, I think, $1,000 of the budget of what it was projected to be. So almost spot on from that end. Total overall, I know there's no nice, neat total column on there, but $101,000 surplus for last fiscal year. Any questions on any of that? Okay, the last piece that I'll jump to is on page 56. This relates to the budget expenditure comment that I noted a few minutes ago. So if you look on the top of page 56, we have to call attention to any funds that overexpended their budget. So please understand that this is looking purely on an expenditure only basis. This does not that overexpended what the budget was for the fiscal year. The original budget stayed intact. There was no amended budget. So as of the end of the year, each of those funds that you see listed spent more than what the original budget called for. Now, if you look at the grand scheme, you operated about $500,000 better in total than what the budget called for. There was about a $300,000 deficit in last year's budget, and total operations was over 100,000 to the positive. So we have to look at it on an expenditure basis that ISB says you need to give fair and accurate representation of what your intended expenditures are. Obviously, there was revenues, more than enough revenues to offset what the additional spending was, because you're still net positive. But we have to call attention to when any fund over expenditure of that budget was. So Clint and I talked about different ways to examine this as the year comes to a close, what the amended budget process would look like. I don't wanna recommend amending the budget just to align with what you actually did, because then you lose all context to the budget really. But there are situations where we had a major building item come up that we weren't budgeting for. That would be an item then to kind of individually add that to your O&M budget, so you can see that, yes, we operated within our budget, kind of excluding this one significant item that we had no control over. Those are the kind of considerations to make, I think, when you do the amended budget. And that was things that Clint and I talked about, and, so you can reach out when the time comes, April, May timeframe. So overall, audit went well, clean opinion. We got everything in the right spot, and I think Lisa is in a good spot, hopefully, with going forward. So
Great.
questions on any of that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate you getting me to the top of the agenda for you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good seeing you.
5. Item Prairie Hill Patriots Pen participants.
Did we have any other?
I'm sorry?
visitors? Did we have any other perception of it as visitors?
We do, Daniel Bennett. Oh, no, we don't. There are
No, okay.
other.
Just waiting.
I'm Andrew Cox, I'm a lay teacher here and took over Patriots Pen when Mrs. Dixon left the team. So one of my favorite things to be able to do every year is bring the Patriots Pen essay contest, which is done through our VFW to our district. And this is a contest that is a nationwide contest. Last year, there were over 73,000 nationwide who participated, and each year our 6th through 8th graders are eligible to participate. And we do that through our local Roscoe VFW. Mr. Tom Cleveland has been a gracious host of that and keeping everything to him on time. So I'm glad that he can be here tonight to see some of the kids that he gets to read the essays for and things like that. But this year's prompt was a little bit trickier than it has been in years past, in my personal opinion. So I was really excited when we got essays in from all 3 grade levels. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders participated. We had 7 students participate again this year, which was great. And I think just one of the biggest things that stands out for this contest is that it's something extra that they choose to do outside of school. There's no teacher feedback given on their essays. And it's showing that they're going above and beyond. They're using their voice through their writing, which I think is huge. It's not being graded, which is a benefit for them. And sometimes they get to earn extra cash, which is great. So this year's prompt was "My Voice in America's Democracy," which I thought was an interesting one. And there were some really good essays turned in. Unfortunately, we had a conflict with all the sports things that are going on, and lots of people are at practices and stuff. So we only have a few kids, but I want to make sure we name everybody that did participate. Do we have a certain?
We do.
Okay, perfect.
So
Are you ready for that part?
Ready.
Okay. First we had Preston Bean in 6th grade participate, who's not here tonight. Aria Murley, who's the 7th grader, participated. She's not here tonight. Autumn Mears is here. Birth certificate.
Congratulations.
We had Erin Messner, who's an eighth grader and not able to attend tonight, participate. Our third place winner was Charlotte Miller, who is a seventh grader. She's unable to be here tonight. Our second place winner was Aiden Weber, who's an eighth grader. He's unable to be here tonight. His sister actually won first place the last 2 years, which was cool to see him win second place. And then our first place winner is Lindley G'day, and she is a sixth grader. And Lindley also won first place at the next step, which is the district level of the contest, which means she's going to state on Friday. And we already know, Mr. Cleveland, correct, that she is going to score in the top 4. Is that correct? At state, which means if she wins first place, she may end up going to the national level of the contest. So I'm really excited because I've never had a student make it this far, which is super cool. And Lily is going to read her essay for us. She also takes care of the rest. Taking the time to learn about current events, understanding key issues, participating in discussions with people. By staying informed and can develop learning community that is creative. Additionally, it's also safety. And understand the feeling is not just a moral obligation, but necessity for thriving society. By actively seeking out different perspectives and experiences, I can broaden my own understanding of the world. It is through open-mindedness and a willingness to learn from others that equality and justice for all. As we delve deeper into the each individual carries a unique story of narrative that influences their thought. It is through understanding and empathy that we can truly connect with one another, bridging the gap that separate us and fostering a community. By embracing the diversity of human experience, we can cultivate a more harmonious society where every voice is heard and valued. Furthermore, I can also learn about the importance of respecting diversity, treating others with kindness and compassion, regardless of their background. We can help create a more involved standing up against discrimination and bullying, and promoting a culture of acceptance. By fostering a sense of unity and cooperation among us, we can contribute to building a stronger democracy. Overall, and as a child, I have valued this American by being informed, engaged, and respectful for
I just wanted to say thank the school district and the school board and especially Andrea for your support of this program. Yeah, I've been working with Willowbrook for, I don't know, probably close to 10 years. The last 4 or 5 with Andrea, and then I worked, I think 1 or 2 years with Mrs. Andrews, and then Mrs. Dixon for a number of years. And we've always had a great turnout for this contest. I did want to say that this is a written essay contest. So when it comes to the judging, all the judges see is what the student wrote. And the first time, I'm not sure, but I'd say the first time Lindley ever read her speech was at the district in front of about 100 people. So she was very nervous, I'm sure. But every, so every time she reads it, she gets more confident. And as Andrea said, at the state Voice of Democracy Patriots Banquet, which will be February 8th in Springfield, Lindley is one of the top 4 in the Patriots Pen. We don't know which one of the top 4, so she could be anywhere from 4th to 1st place. And we'll be excited to hear the results of that. But at the very least, 4th place, she will be awarded $300 for 4th place at the state banquet. So the other thing I wanted to say is that next Tuesday, April 4th or February 4th.
April.
Yeah. At 5:30, we are having an awards program and pizza party at the Roscoe VFW for all the Patriots Spend participants and the Voice of Democracy participants. And if any of you would like to be in attendance, we have invited the students and their families, but if any of you would like to stop by, you're more than welcome. And we should have plenty to eat, and so you're more than welcome. Again, I just want to thank everyone, the students, parents, school district, everyone, Andrea, for participating in this contest. I believe it's very important because it gives these students an avenue to express their feelings of patriotism, and these students are some of the biggest supporters of our veterans. And we really appreciate all the hard work they've done. One last comment is I appreciate the hard work that the school board does, because I was on the Northwood School Board for 8 years, so I know what you're going through, and I'm sure it hasn't gotten any easier since I was on, starting in 1979. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for allowing these students to participate in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bill, before you go, we also want to present you with Pride of Prairie Hill.
Oh.
Thank you for.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, the 2 students who are here, do you want to take a picture with them?
Yeah.
Maybe over here real quick?
Yeah.
Girls, you want to come?
And
up for a quick
families, if
second?
you want to exit at this time, you're welcome to do that, right?
Yep.
Unless you want to stay.
You don't need to stay for the rest of the whole meeting if you don't want to.
Thank you.
We're getting a ton of the picture.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Jack, you want me to tell her? Okay, no. Was,
Checking good.
no.
They're over there.
Take it off.
I just, I'll learn.
I showed you.
That's all right.
Then Nikki said,
Tom. He said you should have kept.
He's gonna get in the
I
picture.
said, no, I thought about yelling and I was like, I'm not gonna.
You've been like, add that.
One last Pride of Prairie Hill, and unfortunately, Danielle Vanek is not here this evening. She's ill, but we want to recognize Teacher Vanek for the Golden Apple. So we have a Pride of Prairie Hill certificate for her as well.
I think, yeah. Mhm.
All right. Consent agenda. Entertain a motion for the approval of December regular meeting minutes, December committee meeting minutes, January bills in the amount of $338,608.24. January payroll in the amount of $436,121.55. The January treasurer's report and student activity fund.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second?
Yes.
Yes.
Keller?
Yeah.
Bell?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yeah.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes.
Administrator reports. Mr. Carter is ill this evening.
I do have
Anything to add? All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mr. Carter was not able to be here. Says Happy New Year. Apologies for not being here. I want to send a thank you to the PSA for putting on the fun fair. Great to see so many students show up. It was a really cool event. Pre-K kinder screening is going on right now. Thank you to the teachers and subs to help take care of this. The lottery will take place in February. Pick a time opens on Monday for February conferences. Please look for an email from Mrs. Passmore. Book fair will be open for both conferences this time. Thank you to Miss Bertrand, our new librarian, for coordinating this. Our friendship assembly was Monday. Please look for the photo in Mr. Carter's periodical this Friday. Our caring assembly will be the first week in March. And the IAR and iReady diagnostic discussions are happening in Collab. IAR testing will take place after spring break. So that'll be our third and final one. Questions for pseudo Mr. Carter? Okay.
Mrs. Thompson.
All right. So first, I just wanted to say thank you to Andrea for doing Patriots Pen. I think it's kind of cool just for myself, seeing some of the things that were here in place when I was a teacher, and then getting to see that those traditions have carried on even over the changes we've had in staff. And it's always cool to see kids in a different light where they get to showcase something that we don't get to see every single day. Probably tell Lindley's kind of a quiet girl, but she's brilliant and she has a lot of great things to say. So for something like this, it really showcases kids in a way that not everyday school gets to offer all of the time. So congrats to both of them, and thank you, Andrea, for doing that. As Mr. Hendricks mentioned, I just wanted to say congratulations to Danielle Vanek. She is in the top 20, which means that she's at the point in the process where committees come in and observe her teaching in the classroom. So she's in January is when that is happening. So they've been in one time, they'll be in, I believe, 2 more times, and then see what shakes out. But either way, she's a wonderful teacher. We're very fortunate to have her. So award or not, at the end of it, she's well deserving and she works very hard. But we wish her the best in all of that. I think it's always fun to mention that we had a rhyme sighting this week. We came in to read to some classrooms for Hatchet. And so that's always, it's always fun just to see him kind of continue his little drop-ins and his little visits that he had. So he was here. I know previously we talked about Art Sadler and just the volunteers and how that program works. And I just wanted to mention, we did end up keeping it volunteer basis. And for those of you who don't know, Jamie Young and Josh Ballard are sharing the responsibility of it. And even though it's not something that's necessarily run through our school, they've done a really great job coordinating the teams and organizing with our custodial staff and hosting. Additionally, we have the Jack Bauman Foundation, who is running sessions, and also the table to raise money for that organization, which has been really cool to see. So that's going really smoothly this year, and I just wanted to mention that. Here at Littlebrook, we have our girls' basketball season is underway. Our quiz bowl team is up and running. They're practicing their facts and trivia after school today. There are 10 members on that team, made up from sixth graders all the way to eighth graders, which is cool. And as mentioned in Mr. Carter's report, we do have conferences coming up. So we will pick a time on Monday, which is this coming Monday, February 3rd. We will also have the book fair here again when that takes place. And then also we do have IAR coming up in April. And then also at the middle school, we test fifth graders and eighth graders on Illinois Science Assessment. Any questions on any of that? Okay.
Mr. Sizik.
Yeah, one thing I just want to bring up, and we had talked about it a little bit last month and the month before, is the committee of the whole. Just want to know the board's thoughts on if that's something we'd like to try in February. Chatted about that, so.
I thought about it about a day and a half after it
We can stick with committees, we're just throwing it out there.
I'm totally open to doing it. I know we had said we were gonna attend one to kind of get a feel for it. But I'm also open to just trying it as well.
happened. Is that something that Mr. Carter would be willing to attend? As-
I think he does.
Would admin attend the committee of the whole?
Typically not, but I mean, if we ask them to be there, yeah.
I'm just thinking it through because he has experience, not
Sure.
necessarily because he's the principal.
Yeah.
Of.
Oh,
Right.
attend the one we do, not go attend a different one to meet with. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, he's
I'll look
very
at
familiar.
when
Yeah.
Nick is to see. And I guess my question would be, when would we hold it? Because we typically do the finance committee meeting a week before. And we do the other ones 2 weeks before.
Yeah, most of the committees of the whole that I've seen, they schedule about 2 weeks, like 2 weeks before, so maybe 2 weeks Wednesday before.
Would we be able to have financial report though? That worked out as part of being ready for
That's the most recent.
yeah.
I am definitely. Forward giving.
Thoughts? Do we want to make a motion to propose that? Start a committee of the whole? Okay, Ken?
We have to motion for that?
I mean.
Or just more like, are you
if we wanna
wanting?
get just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
roll,
yeah.
You
Formality.
can do an aye, doesn't have
You
to
guys
be
think,
a,
do you want to try it next
doesn't
time?
have to be a roll call when we're in.
I'm open to it, yeah.
Okay.
I'll give it a shot.
Let's just rip the Band-Aid.
So all those in favor of one committee meeting, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We'll tell you the day
Establish the
after the
date.
first.
Yeah.
Don't you guys usually come to the ed meeting?
So we come upon invite now. So we
Oh,
don't come to everyone, we come when we're invited.
Okay.
Or like, so they each came like recently, so now it maybe be a
We
few
came in the
months.
beginning of the year and then we.
Did a
come
mid-year.
early, And then we came for mid-year and then.
Got it. Okay.
So if we stick with the 2 weeks, it'd be February 12th.
I was just gonna ask that. I was like, can we say a date out loud so that I remember it?
Let's connect next.
Oh, is it?
So I'm gonna make a mental note.
Okay, there you go. And then I can just send an email to see if 5:30 works or 5 or.
A good one.
All right, great. We'll set the date as 12th and we'll figure out the time. See what that looks like. Just a couple other things, just want to give you a heads up, nothing on the agenda for approval. But looking towards next year, it's already February and gonna be February here soon. Just some future positions that we can talk through a little bit through the committee of the whole, and see what that looks like. So we currently have a part-time STEM / ESL position. And what we'd like to do is, and we can have discussion about that again at the committee of the whole. But we'd like to take that STEM position, make that into a full-time position. That will allow for a lot more equity and opportunity for the students within the Gray Hill building, not necessarily here at Willowbrook. STEM is something that we've talked about possibly adding to the Willowbrook building, but I think if we were able to put that full-time STEM position in, that might give us a better idea about what it might look like at the lower levels or how we build on it at at the secondary level if we were to ever take that leap. So that's something I'll be looking for in February. And again, we can have more discussion about that. So with that, if we were to make that position full-time, we would take the ESL position, and instead of it being a half-time, we'd also make that a full-time position. That's a need right now for sure. When I first started 7 years ago, we were at about a half a dozen kids, and now we're pushing 30, and every year it's just more and more. So to give you a little bit of perspective, I believe Kinnickinnick, just right down the road, I think they're at like 50, 60 students. I'd have to take a look around there, but they have 3 full-time ESL people. So it's a definite need. It's a definite, not a want, to help service the students in both buildings. It'd be a district-wide position. So Sandy's done the best that has been able to do over the years. And also she's retiring this year. So it's a really nice opportunity for us to hire that position and have somebody in here that can take the load for both buildings. And then one more is a full-time special education additional position over at Prairie Hill. Our numbers are quite large right now. And from a Gallatin standpoint, it's something that we'll need to do. So just giving you a heads up on those. And then one more thing that I'd like to propose, again, nothing's actionable tonight. Like to have an actionable item in February, is possibly looking to going to a co-teaching model and beginning that over at Prairie Hill. So right now, we have, a lot of need for students that need a lot of help, right? That's why I'm asking you for a special education teacher here in February. But the co-teaching model is something that some of our neighboring districts do. And essentially what that is you have a classroom teacher, then you have a special education teacher that goes into the classroom, helps to push in to do different things with differentiated instruction, one-on-one instruction, the ability to, what's that? Yeah, interventions, more small group instruction, that sort of thing. So something, administration and I have been talking about for about the last year or so. So it'd be a really nice opportunity with just the need that we see to be able to try a model like that. So something I'll be looking for next year, or for next year for approval for next month, just to give you a heads up. And the reason I'm bringing that to you now, as many of you know, is the earlier that we can post for these positions, the better chance we have to get the best quality applicants instead of waiting until March, April. Let's see. I think that's it. That's all I have for now. Any questions?
Okay. Building and finance. We met yesterday evening, I should say. We met in here at 4:30, I believe. 4:30, I'm in here yesterday. Jason Crouch, Tina Anderson, I, and Clint were present for that. We reviewed the January bills. We had a review of the monthly deposits, activity accounts, treasury report. We reviewed the Benning annual financial report as well. We also discussed First Student, which is on the docket tonight for a vote. We went into executive session where we discussed appointment matters, negotiations, and then we adjourned. Next meeting for that was set for,
No, but
we're gonna do that now, the Wednesday, the 12th, on February 12th, so. Anything I missed on finance we want to cover?
No, but the first student contract extension was some good news. You might want to share the numbers.
Yeah, when they first came back, they were very interested in doing a 5-year contract. The nations were very interested in that because the more we can control costs and budget for them, the better off we are. When they initially came to us, they were just north of 30% over the 5 years. And so we had some back and forth discussions. And so right now, what I'll be asking for tonight is approval for next year through the 2029-2030 school year. They've asked for the breakdown of a 9% next year and then 4 4s after that. So 25%. So we got them down about 5%. The reason for the 9% right off the bat are a few different reasons. One is they have a new CBA, so they have salaries to pay, obviously, and benefits. The other bigger, there are some smaller things, but the other bigger aspect of it is the fleet of buses. So a lot of their buses are coming up on the age that I think it's like 12 or 13 years that we have in the contract that we're comfortable with. So they're going to have to start buying new buses and getting those in the rotation. So that's a big part of the 9% up front. And then to be able to control the cost for the 4 4s afterwards, it makes a ton of sense. If you remember when they came back to us with the 3-year that we're currently coming up on, I think it was like 17% the
Mhm.
first year that we
That's what I was
had.
gonna ask. I remember it being a big
Yeah,
number
it
and
was.
then the same format, but bigger numbers,
Correct,
I feel
yeah,
like.
at the
Okay.
beginning, but that was a huge number compared to the 9%.
Yeah.
And you know, to be perfectly honest, and transparent, there's not a lot of players in the area for transportation purposes. There are a couple, but they're smaller options and they wouldn't be able to handle the districts that serve us through First Student. We've got a good relationship with them and we've had a good relationship with them. We had some kinks when we first started out this first 3 year, and I think they've ironed a lot of those out. We've got a lot of people that we can contact. Field trips are still a little bit of an issue, just from drivers, but that's increased and gotten better too, just like our sub pool has. So, coming out of the pandemic. So, all in all, the nations see this as a win-win. I see it as a win as far as budgeting purposes are concerned. And that'll keep us good through the next 5 years.
Was there any further discussion about the external cameras on the buses?
Yeah, there's nothing set in stone at this time and it's something that Liddell's looking into, but
Okay.
nothing that's like concrete.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, like right now, this is the proposal that we're looking to approve. So the actual language of it, like we can talk about, hey, we want to see some arms or we
Like
want
when
to see
they
some cameras.
replace those buses, like the 50 buses or.
Yes.
whatever,
Yep.
Like maybe that could be part of it then. Okay,
Absolutely.
Great.
And I think some of that's a part of the safety standards for busing anymore anyway.
Good.
So that'll definitely all be a part of the discussion. But right now, it's the financial aspect of it
You know, if these are the newer buses that have this, oh,
that I don't know. I can find out though.
the new ones all do.
Let me find out too.
I only know because I watched that.
I have a quick question, sorry for finance. I'm just curious, this report that we get here on page 6 and 7, where they lay out like the statements of asset liabilities and the expenditure. I know we as a board get the board report that looks like it's a detailed spending, but it doesn't. When it goes more like bills, like who bills it. Is there a portal that we could see the like monthly spend in like the way that the funds are separated outside of the different accounts?
Yeah, actually, if you go into. So
It's just at the bottom of.
the consent agenda treasurer's report should give you a good idea there. And there are other ways that I can manipulate those numbers too. If you have specific. Specific points.
Oh, the revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just know sometimes when we're
And
like,
treasurer.
having big budgetary conversations,
Sure.
it's nice to like be able to kind of see where we're at. And I see what you guys have been adding over the last few months. It's hard for me to like wrap my head around what that goes up to, like a bending curve. I'm like, I don't know where that falls in our actual big bucket.
Sure.
But you're saying in the consent agenda, that's where I should be looking for more of like the expenditure.
Yeah, and there's there's a revenue and expense report in there too, that really breaks everything down.
Oh, I think I'm just looking in the wrong spot,
There might
looking
be
in under the
details, yeah.
finance.
And you can even look in the monthlies. I think that's has the cost of coding on it too, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you look at every finance meeting we had has a coding in it on every bill that we get. Whether it be pizza or milk or
Yeah.
whatever, reimbursements for the annual conference.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
that is
I've
on
seen
there
that.
too.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
just depends on how deep down you want to go.
No, I'm just looking at the big picture when we're having like big financial conversations. I saw that and was like, oh, that helps my brain understand.
Absolutely. And if you want more specific stuff, just reach out.
No, I'll start looking in the consent agenda now that I know that I just keep looking at that.
This format is only typically required for the end of year audited financial statements because ISBE requires it.
Yeah.
But to put this in I think monthly might be too much because there's so many timing issues that even a quarterly format, a lot of schools do that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like change something that's happening, but I saw that was like, that's really helpful to kind of understand.
Sure.
I mean, it wouldn't take much for her to just, it's the same coding that she does for the monthly reports. Put them in this format every quarter. Most schools will do that. It's just a matter of a report.
I mean, is that something that would be helpful to everyone else? Otherwise, like I said, I can look at the consent agenda.
So, kind of, I'm
feel kind of the same way, like the one that you pointed out, the treasurer's report is very condensed. The full line item one is very, it's like 40 pages long.
Sure.
And I think the one.
We know,
that I'm
we look at it every
seeing-
day.
I think the one I'm seeing here is kind of in between those two. It's not
We
super
do that,
dense.
and just so you understand that finance, we actually, every month, I know it's 40 paid, whatever, you know, like, we look at that, we look at every single invoice that backs that up too, and then once we review that, get short questions at point, sign off on it every month.
Yeah.
We question
Right,
every other one. Why are these?
all the way down to
Why are there
pizza.
so many?
It's not with
pizzas
pizzas.
every Thursday?
How much are
They
they?
paid $260. How they do their.
Does this show you, does this show them the funds?
Okay, that makes sense.
They're trying to see.
We,
Maybe just an idea or is Clint, you could probably leave this. If
And then everything
if you
under
do,
that,
it's a
okay,
committee,
never
if you
realized.
have something that we're coming
Okay.
into where you know there's a new position hiring. It is helpful to kind of, for those of us who are not in the space, to have a little bit more of a bigger picture, but kind of in those buckets
Yeah.
of the way that you budget.
Yep.
That might be helpful for us to have a little bit better of a foundation of what we're talking about.
Tina, if you don't mind, I'll reach out to you to, if there are different names for reports that I could look for to run those.
You got it. Thank you.
we also in finance, discussed staffing, which Clint already covered in his district update, so I don't want to miss that. We did discuss staffing as well, so. If that's all for building and finance, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the first student contract for the 2025-2026 through 2029-2030. 2030, sorry. Let me restate that. Motion to approve first student contract for 2025 through 2026 through the 2029 through 2030 school years.
So moved. I'll second. Mr. Crouch?
Yes.
Mrs. Anderson? Yeah. Mr. Hendrick?
Yes.
Bell? Yes. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Ms. Smallbacker?
Yes.
Education and transportation.
We met on January 16th. It was the education committee of myself, Kim and Stephanie and Clint. And then also Mr. Carter came to this meeting. Jackie came to our one in December to kind of give us a mid-year update about how the school year is going. And as evident by Mr. Carter being sick today and some other students and teachers being sick that particular day, he was saying that there were 19 staff out in the district. And influenza A was going around like crazy. And a lot of para positions have been hard to fill for subbing as well too. However, we are seeing that increase in our sub pool, which is helping. And then I just want to give a shout out as well to all of those teachers that are pulled, especially our interventionists, like the RTI teachers at Prairie Hill, they get pulled. They have to be very flexible to have that position because I think they go in thinking they're going to work on something and then they get pulled to sub and cover here. So, and I know that happens at Willowbrook all the time as well. So thank you for the flexibility for our teachers doing that. And then Mr. Carter just kind of gave his overall update so far. As we know, it's his first year being principal at Prairie Hill. Very complimentary of the staff and the students and the families and parents and everyone, saying he's seen amazing things we all know is happening as well. Observing the teachers and getting to know the students, and a lot of great feedback. One trend that he is noticing that was mentioned before in previous board meetings is chronic absenteeism, which came up in our, I believe, our school report card too, something with absenteeism. So he's diving deep into data with that and looking at trends, and working with one of our teachers at Prairie Hill who's actually getting their master's degree in something along this line too. So looking for ways to start to engage the community and educate parents about just how much, if you look at like, even if they miss just, a few days here and there, how much instructional time it adds up to, or even if you're just tarding or 5 minutes late every day, that equates to being gone. Do you remember the number of days? It was something like,
For every 10 parties, it was like
Oh.
2 days of
a
instruction.
full day of instruction or 2 full days of instruction. Yes. So just, oh, it's okay if you're 5 minutes late, but it really does add up. So just beginning those conversations on how to educate parents, community, students, things like that, to try and improve some of those chronic absenteeism that we're seeing.
And just to let you know, in his
Mhm.
next periodical, there's a visual that's
Yes.
going to be in there for parents to see,
Shows.
just to give them an idea. for
Yeah.
educating.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It was also really interesting that it was opposite of what we thought, which was the absenteeism increases by grade as they get older, which we thought there'd be more absenteeism in like kindergarten, first grade, preschool. And then as they got older, maybe parents were like, "We're not staying home. You have
Yeah.
to like now."
Yeah, we were thinking like we were more likely to,
to.
yeah, you take your kids out when they're little for a vacation, but as they get older and the homework
But-
gets harder, I don't, that's
You're
part
right,
of it.
but
Like,
it,
so
in our.
it was opposite what we all thought it would be.
Worse as kids get older.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think there is an education component to.
Kids on seventh and eighth grade.
I realized like.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes you're late. you get that.
Exactly.
Drop your kids off on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear about it.
And those chronic absenteeism, just to kind of clarify too, because I know I
Mhm.
began this saying that flu A is going around crazy. So obviously stay home if you're sick,
Yes.
but those chronic absenteeism cases are a little bit different. And then he also is starting 3 new committees with the staff. There's going to be a safety committee. The goal is to start in March, looking at just, again, that feedback that they've received from doing some of the drills from fire, police officers that were present, just the feedback on things that they can improve on. So looking at establishing a safety committee, a leadership committee that will be starting in April, and a scheduling committee. And this scheduling committee is just looking not to make like the building schedule, which, is pretty much established at Prairie Hill because you have your classroom teachers, but looking at some of those elective or specials teachers and great ways to utilize their support staff, paras, things like that too. So I think it's great, if Mr. Carter's here, I'd give him kudos again, that he is observing a lot in his first half of the year and then implementing some ways that we can become even better, but he's using the staff to do that. All of these committees, he sent out Google Forms or interest forms, and then it was teachers volunteering to be on the committees. So a lot of teacher voice will be on them as well. And I think that was it. If there's anything I'm missing.
I would just say, it was really fun to hear him speak and talk about his first year experience so far. And I think if you, just as a board, it also was, we made a great, yes, you interviewed and picked the right person. He is a really great addition to the admin. He cares so much about the teachers and the students. And he has some really great perspectives that he's bringing. And it seems like the way that he's relationally navigating change is also, he's doing a really good job. So thank you.
Yes. That's it for education. Unless there are any questions.
I just have a question,
Mhm.
I guess, for Jackie, not related to him, but you mentioned the special study hall and whatnot.
Mhm.
For Willowbrook, board member hat on, parent teacher hat on, I'm hearing a lot of discussion about the students wishing they had their study halls back. That's what we did this year, which is, I know we took it away, but then there's the option, I think, to get it back like once a week or something. Are we looking at that? I'm just getting lots of.
I will be real honest, I have not thought too far and deep about putting it back in for next year yet. I think there are a lot of positives to the electives that we've added in, and I think some students are really benefiting from that. We do have, I would say, intervention study hall options where we're finding some chronic absenteeism or chronic missing work, where in lieu of an elective, we will send students to a particular room to have that study hall when they're showing us that they need it. By and large, the feeling that study halls were used really effectively in the past is not always the case in every classroom and every grade level. So in the new electives, we're at least getting other exposure. And for example, we were able to bring back Spanish, which was something that was important to us. Our 7th and 8th graders are getting Spanish. There's also in the past, if you remember, like they could only choose band and choir, or like they missed out on art or music or theater or those different things that I think are very valuable to children becoming well-rounded and finding what they like, their passions in the middle school. So this year we're able to give them both where they can have band and music, but also do art or cultural appreciation or Spanish. They kind of cycle through all of those. With that being said, I know that all of our elective teachers have granted 1 day of study hall in each of their electives. So I wouldn't say that they're not getting study hall at all. It's just not every single day. So there haven't been any decisions made. I think that we will always continue to offer support for students who show us that they need that within our school day. So some students will inevitably always have a place for a study hall, even though it might not be on a schedule. The high school does not offer a study hall unless you have a specialized plan where you might be placed into one. So it really is great preparation for them going into high school to be able to time manage about that. Overall, if I'm just speaking freely, since we've gone to standards based here, getting homework completed has always been a problem because there isn't a necessarily about like a numerical value attached to it. It's really getting kids to understand that their practice and prep is to prepare them for that assessment, which is where that score comes in. So we're doing different incentives, things here, whole school wise to try to really move the needle on the homework completion piece. But I think some of it too is you get middle schoolers to a point and a lot of parents will say, oh, they're middle school, it's on them now. And we kind of hands off, but in fact, they still need a lot more guidance and a lot more checking and a lot more kind of like putting that accountability ownership back on them. So it's not an option for kids to choose, but we will support them as educators when we feel that they don't have the supports at home or the ability at home, or we're finding patterns and they aren't able to do it at home. We will give them study hall another day.
Would just throw out there, maybe adding in instead of an elective, would you choose to keep it? I know a lot of the athletes, they're like, I miss my study hall, because by the time I get practice games, shoot away games, it's like 8 at night, and I'm exhausted, and I miss that 1 hour of study hall, or I have to do it.
Nothing's off the table for sure, but I will say collectively, I don't feel like it was utilized by the majority, even with homework. So I think they're getting a lot more value right now with exposure to other things. But we always discuss and kind of look and talk, like I'll talk to teachers as spring comes near and talk about that aspect of things. And forward.
And I by no means think like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying maybe have that option. I do art, Spanish, whatever.
Yeah.
Some students who are just not as quick learners, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to point out too, because we do have to act as board members and parents, and we hear it from every side, right? Like, it's obviously what you're hearing from the parent side, but I'm on the education committee, so I have to separate it, but like, I hear such the opposite, that's one of those, I put the trust in the
Sure.
admin and the teachers, because I don't know that I trust anything that my 7th grade boy tells me he needs out of his day. I'm just saying, I see it, I see that it's a hard
We
read
definitely-
coming from the kids. I know they're stressed and we put them in too much and all that, but.
They're fantastic. Like,
Mhm.
wish Spanish was almost a requirement for everybody.
Yeah.
But I just heard so much, like, I missed my study hall. That's when I got all my homework done, and now I have to do it at 9:30 at night because I'm on sports or whatever.
Yeah.
I
No, I definitely get
I
that.
definitely hear that. Keep in mind, we do still have 5th grade study hall because they're new and the whole concept is new. So they get it every single day. As I mentioned, we talked with electives very early on. They're offering it in their elective periods once a week. So kids still get a study hall at least once a week. The ones who we find, need the support, we always shift. And that's what's one thing that's great about us being small and being a tight knit community is like, we can do that here. We can shift and accommodate as they need, as they're showing us they need that support. But I think come 8th grade, and I know Kelly could speak to that, like they don't have it in high school. Their lunch is their time basically to get their homework done. So it is important, I think, and also stepping them to prepare. And you will also see a trend. Different grade levels have different amounts of homework. And even I could say like with the math block right now, there's a significant amount of time for them to do work in class. So like if kids are coming home with a large portion of homework from the middle school, they are not using their class time wisely. And I think that is something that is important for us to teach them before they leave. So again, we always take into that all that consideration. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think we'll always have some type of intervention space for that, for those who need it. Whether or not it's whole group, I think it becomes a little challenging too with numbers. Like if I have a survey that says, how many of you want to study hall? And let's say 50 of a class of 100 want to study hall. So I would assign 2 teachers to that, and then I would have 2 electives. And then, oh, my best friend's in here. So then all the parents are emailing to switch. And at some point, we can't do that because you assign so many teachers to so many classes for so many numbers. So like we get to a point where we say, you know, no, we're not shifting out of band anymore. No, we're not shifting out of choir anymore because we don't have any more spaces in classes because they can only house so many kids. And electives are sometimes a little bit harder to run with the numerical quantity that they have, just the structure of them. So we try to keep that in mind too. So however we move forward, we just have to make sure that numbers are good for teachers to have a fair amount in their classroom.
Right, policy. Mr. Keller. The rest for reading.
Reading in general.
Sure.
Presentation. Great. So Steph, myself and Clint met and we reviewed the OMA action items that Steph is going to go over here shortly. Our presentation. We had items to note for Clint or Nikki to address, the minutes, agenda, things like that. Some were sent your way, Josh, for stating during the meeting. Otherwise, we reviewed section 1, a short one at the end. All those policies were in compliance, no 5-year reviews, but then we have a few policies that are on for a first reading. It's just there for a 5-year review. We don't have any press updates for them. We didn't have anything that needed to be changed from our perspective. So it's just kind of reapproving those policies 250, 100, 640, 665, 6210, 670. And if there's any questions on those for second reading, or you can ask them now. Otherwise.
Okay, I'll put it up here so everyone can get. I will. You also have it, in the shared home as well.
That really close to you.
So, as you know, we have, as a policy committee, taken on a deep dive of our OMA, the Open Meetings Act, to review any potential discrepancies that we might have, make sure that we still are in compliance. And so what we want to discuss here is we're pretty much done. So we want to just quickly talk about, you can go to the next slide. The agenda for this presentation, we're going to talk about the approach we took, what our findings were, and then the next steps. So first, to speak to the approach, what we did is we pulled all available resources, and I could actually say Justin pulled all available resources. Really hard to grab every resource in the reference. I'll show that on the next slide in just a minute, but we utilized all the references that we have for the Open Meetings Act, including all of our policies that we review. And then we also utilize some examples from different districts locally. Then we took those resources, we created a cited OMA review document. Again, Justin did that. I'm not going to say we, because that was a lot of work for him. It's that 20-page document that you all have had access to over the last couple months. And then together we started working through that document. We utilize a color system to flag the different priorities. And what that just means is within the OMA code, there are policies where there's specific requirements that you have to adhere to for the Open Meetings Act. But then there's also things that are strongly recommended. There are things that maybe are best practice that we could utilize. There are also just some items that are worth discussing that maybe they're not even really a recommendation or best practice, but if you want to just take another step into being even more transparent or showing more information, we can talk about those options as well. So we went through and highlighted everything, and then anything that required immediate action step is what we focused on first. And then we spent 3 committee meetings reviewing together, and a ton of additional research time was conducted individually. Justin and I, as we kind of went through and did all the color coding, we determined together, what do we want to bring to the board for discussion? What do we know we need to take those immediate action steps on? So, yeah, so if you go to the next slide, these are just a list of the references here. You'll see that we have a couple example agendas that we looked at. We've got some FAQs there. Of course, ISB, we're utilizing our policy as well. And then the document Letting the Sunshine In, which also speaks a little bit more deeply. I didn't note it here, but we also do have our policy reviews that we have done in the past, our OME reviews that we referenced as well. Lori Martinez, who will be there for next week, our internal board review. She had also passed over some documentation. We did training with our lawyers, I think 2 or 3 years ago. So we also referenced that, but these were the key documents that we used. So I want to get to the findings. We spent a lot of time, put a lot of energy into it. I'm glad we did it. There are 153 OMA guidance items that we worked through together. Again, some are required by policy, by our policy, some are strongly recommended, and others are some best practices. In total, we found and resolved 17 discrepancies, and 17 actually is higher than what it actually in total ends up being because there's overlap between them, and I'll explain that. I want to speak to something, an action step that we're going to take, but I do just want to call out, there are a lot of guidance items here. And so, you know, as a policy, like it's important, we are going through line by line and scrutinizing all of it. But we're doing a pretty good job. So I do want to like call out, I know we have over here been like the little people are like, hey, make sure you say that one thing, make sure you say that thing. But in reality, the other 42 things you're supposed to be doing, you're doing correctly. So of the discrepancies that we found, you're going to see they're very minimal, worth pointing out, of course, worth resolving. But we were really happy with our findings. So let's go through those really quickly. From the agenda perspective, which is what is posted, which is what we have every month, which is the public posting as well. We have the date, time noted on the meeting. We did not specify library. So we will now start specifying the actual location, which is the library.
Willowbrook.
We have Willowbrook.
Have the room.
We do not have the room. So that has been implemented and updated. Identifying the school board by district name number, we were missing county on our agenda, so we have added county. The type of meeting that we have every month, and this is another one of those overlaps, you're going to see it a couple times here. So again, like I said, that number should go down from 17, but on the agenda, when we are in a regular board meeting, we now will have it noted that it is a regular. Right now, it just says board meeting. Now it will say regular. That is to differentiate if we ever do a special board meeting, we will add that. Something that we already corrected a couple months ago is listing consent agenda items, including the approval of our closed meeting minutes. So now instead of just saying consent agenda items, we are bulleting what is in those consent agenda items. And then the action taken after closed session must contain the general nature of final action to be on the agenda. What that means is we were saying approve the personnel report. And now what we need to, what we should be doing is contain add a little bit more to the general nature of that. So I gave an example, hire, resignation, and transfer of certified, non-certified staff. So those are the changes that we are making to our agenda. We have connected with Clint, Nikki. These all are actively being implemented or have been implemented. Moving on to the consent agenda itself. The change that we need to make is just that Josh, which he already has corrected, will announce the consent agenda items during the meeting. Okay. Moving on to minutes. Dollar amounts are now going to be posted. We would noted in our minutes that we had bills and payroll, but now we're adding our dollar amounts. For the employment votes, we're actually going back and forth with our lawyers right now because there is a little bit of a gray area in the policy. But we will be including names of employees and actions being taken for employment votes. But we are determining what that specifically does mean, or potentially like if there's any exceptions to that. Another thing for the minute is we just have to update what type of board meeting it is. So now in our minutes, we just have to write the word regular next to board minute. During our introduction, Josh just needs to declare that a quorum is present, which he did tonight. Thank you very much. And we'll make sure that's noted in the minutes. And then the minutes and update here that you will see is even though we are voting and showing who has voted during roll call for each one of our motions, we need to record at the end of each one, this motion has passed. So, or has not passed. And then again, when we are for payroll, if we're motioning to approve any payroll, we do need to itemize or show a total payroll amount. Motions there, we need to notate that. Closed meeting minutes. This one we've already again addressed. The motion to roll call vote that legally close the meeting needs to just be written into the closed meeting minutes. The motion and exemption, once we start recording in our closed meeting, Josh just needs to restate what that motion is, which he's already been doing. And then closed session meetings, we say in our regular meeting minutes, when we have opened, closed for both, we also need to just dictate that into our closed meeting minutes. I think you actually are doing that, but I can't get out. Minutes, I just kept it on here to just be sure. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think. And then the final two is for executive session, the agenda. When we are discussing, again, this is just an overlap here. But when we are discussing employment matters, if there is final action required, we do need to state more than what the personnel report. We just need to state the general nature of that. And then when we do make our motions and write our minutes, we need to have the employee's name stated. Okay. And then the final one, which is training. So the policy requires that there is an employee designated to receive yearly OMA training. We have always done that. Our employee is Clint. And after we went through all of this work ourselves and dedicated, things for 30 hours, it was a lot of time. We felt really strongly that a policy committee member should also, we should self-select as a board. And I think it's important to understand why, because I'm obviously born in May, and so Justin will be designated, but for my perspective of this, I think that OMA is meant to protect the community. It's meant to make sure that we are accountable, that we're transparent, that we are not hiding things. And so it is a very wonderful policy. We should have the policy. We should know the policy. And at the beginning of the school year, this was something that our community brought to us and spoke with a lot of concern about OMA. And because we did not have a specific representative on the board, we could have responded very quickly and not spend 40+ hours of our time when we had a lot of other work to be done and things that are really important to the district. Now, I'm not saying this is not important, but when you look at what the findings were, we were fine. We had a couple things to address. We could have addressed those really quickly. So I'm not saying it's by any stretch it was a good exercise. It was not a waste, but I've been very clear in the policy. I know I don't want to do it again. There's so many things in our district that are really important, so many things that matter, and this is the thing that should be like the guardrail for us and not the thing that distracts us from the important. So Justin has willingly accepted the role and is happy to also commit with the annual training. And so he'll do that every year for 2 years. We don't want to have a policy member do it for more than 4 years. We think it is important to have fresh eyes because I have been on this, I've been in this role for almost 4 years. Clint's been in OMA trained every year, and you can have a miss. You can miss that the county is not represented on your agenda, and like we don't want to miss things. Like we do, it is small, but it does matter at the end of the day. And so we do want fresh eyes from the policy perspective. So it's not anything we have to vote on, but we would just like to make sure we're all aligned that this is something that we'll continue to do, even as board members who feel passionate about it grow up. And then the very last thing that we do have to update is all of our training certificates. We all have had OMA training. Those do need to be posted on the website. So that has to go up. So that's our final piece. So then for the next steps, Clint and Nikki are to resolve all action items. I think you already have. Thank you so much for doing that. We went through all of them 2 weeks ago. We will, of course, close the loop on all this and we'll double check all of these items. Justin, if you all approve, is the official OMA training designee. And then what we're going to do to help is the policy committee, we're going to create just like a glossary checklist of the top OMA items for school guidance. This will help just all of us as we're sitting here to understand like, hey, if that's something that does need to be enclosed, make sure that this is stated. That way, if Josh or whoever's president misses something or forgets to say something, you can quickly say, hey, make sure you make that motion this way. So that kind of helps us all just keep the top level things at the top of mind. Now we're doing that, but I do want to just reiterate, you are doing a great job. So there is not like misses. There's not misses that are happening that are really glaring. And then there are a couple of things that we are going to just review and flag for conversation during the board review. There are, like I said, we went after the ones that everything I'm noting that I wouldn't even say we're not in compliance because some of them were not a compliance issue. It was like, we just want to, it's strongly recommended. We want to be able to, add that extra layer. But there's some additional things that we do want to just flag during our session. Him and I need to look through it again because we've marked this up quite a bit. But there are a couple of things worth discussing that we'll bring to you guys next week. And that's it.
Are there consequences for non-compliance, like fine penalties? What?
So we did a full OMA audit 3 years ago. We at that point had
Jeez, please.
we did have one thing, and it was me. It was my very first board meeting I'd ever been to. I asked a question that should have been asked in open. I asked it in closed, and I did not realize it was an open question. And so if you were on the board, you remember we got a letter from the state that said you're in compliance, but during this one closed meeting session, one of your board members asked this question. That was so.
Well, that's pretty good.
So we did great. And even these, if we were to have been audited, nothing. There would have been nothing that they would know that fine or no. Now, if I remember correctly, because I did go back and look at the letter that we received from the state when we were audited last time, if there had been anything more egregious, like they had, I mean, we had to like put those closed meeting, those questions that I had asked public. And we had to say, we said something in open that should have been in, or said something closed that should have been open, so we had to acknowledge that. I think if there had been that like over multiple months, maybe we would have been fined, or maybe something would have happened, but it was so small that it was, I wouldn't even say it was a hand slap, it was just like, here's.
Yeah.
Here's it.
There's some decisions can be reversed too when we.
Yeah.
Those things. So there are various
Reactions to that.
potential consequences. Yeah.
Yeah, because the compliance component out of these is like the county. But we wouldn't like on the agenda, that is a policy, like noted in policy, but not showing that. We weren't showing that when we were audited by the state. And it was not one that they even acknowledged to us. So these are very small.
And I think the county, the more I looked at that one too, it might have been in the realm of not a specific, like you must list the county, but it was one of those recommendations. And it was super simple.
Yeah.
Like Nick at the county.
So just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's why when I said this at the 17, I did not even pull the flag up clients, because a lot of them, we just decided like, let's just do it. So anyways, any other questions?
No question from me, but I thank you very much, both of you. I mean,
Yeah,
as
I'm
the
here.
person that's trying to run this meeting and follow our agenda, I appreciate everything you guys have done with it. Obviously, tonight, we've been able to catch a lot of these things, and, you know, I'd say, you know, none of us are professional degree board members, right? We're all volunteers of this community, doing the absolute best that we can to put students first. And I think it's always important to keep that in mind. So I appreciate that. But again, no reason why we can't continue to better ourselves as a board, as a district, or like academically, what our faculty, staff, and students are achieving too. So thank you very much for doing that.
I just want to say too, that glossary checklist that I was thinking about that as you were talking. And the fact that you guys are willing to do that is pretty awesome, because as somebody who's been where Josh is sitting and then watch somebody before them, it's like you get up there for the first time, and yeah, we have our OMA training and we've been through, you know, how many meetings by the time I was in that position, and I start saying things and I'm like, am I saying this because I'm supposed to, or is I saying this because the last person did it? Like, it's kind of hard, you know, and you're doing it on the fly kind of, you know, so I think just for future, because Josh is also leaving, gone in May, that I think, I was like, not that I'm gonna keep talking about everyone leaving, but I think the glossary checklist for who, it's just, I mean, while they are small things, it's just nice to look at something and be like, am I saying this because I'm supposed to, or just because I'm just feeling it out, you know? So that's awesome.
There's another aspect too, that, you know, we have a pretty complete list of this should be on the minute. So even the policy committee could have once a year, just look at the last month.
Like the most recent one,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And just make sure that
And overall, like the policy, like I can't even, there's no point in going in the past, but as somebody who came to their first meeting and wasn't even like, I hadn't even done my oath yet, and they went into close, and then I came back and they're like, oh, and Kimberly Allenbacher, you're on policy. And I was like, I'm on what? Like, and going to those first 2 years of policy meetings and having no background in policy and seeing how it was done compared to how it is now is absolutely unreal. Like the gains we made. Like, I don't know what was being done. I'm not gonna lie. It was me for 2 years. I have no idea what we were doing. Like, we were trying to work through it. Me and the superintendent at the time, it wasn't Clint. But we didn't know. We were not literally as informed as you guys are right now. And I was trying to read a press and trying to do these things. And the fact that we have such a capable pair of people right now is pretty awesome. Unreal. Yeah,
there's your applause right there.
Thumper.
Thumper.
Did anybody else have anything regarding that? The OMA review? Thank you.
Good work.
That's
Yeah, thank
amazing.
you.
Very good work. Very, very
Great.
much appreciated.
Mhm.
As far as press reading, we need to entertain a motion tonight for the press reading, the first reading, and that is paragraph 2, subparagraph 50. Paragraph 2, subparagraph 100. 6, subparagraph 40, 6, subparagraph 65, 6, subparagraph 210, and 6, subparagraph 270. I don't know if I'm reminding those readings in the right way, but you get the general idea.
Are we voting on them now? That's what I'm.
No, it's just.
This first reading.
First reading.
Okay.
No vote.
Okay, you're gonna move the motion. Okay. All right, well, I will move on to miscellaneous. And.
Sorry. I
Sorry.
removed the vote.
My word moved. In connection with that, yesterday I received a letter from the Office of the Attorney General. We have an allegation filed against us by a Miss Misty Wells. This is in relation to the OMA, an allegation of violation of OMA as far as what was verbally stated on our consent agenda relating to September committee meeting minutes. So that is being reviewed internally with the district. And then we're also working with legal counsel on that to provide a response. Order requests, Illinois Retired Teachers Association. Same thing they always do, right?
Yep, name and contact information for retired.
I got that Monday, I believe. Like that.
He's like, I don't know.
All right. It's all executive session. I'm going to entertain a motion to enter into executive session to discuss appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. That deals with paragraph 5, ILCS 120, subparagraph 2, subparagraph C of 1, negotiations. 5, ILCS chapter 120, subparagraph 2, subparagraph C, item 2.
I'll second.
Ms. Swanbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson.
Yeah.
Mr. Crouch.
Yes.
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 It's an open session at 6:59 PM, January 29th, 2025.
Yeah, good idea.